I think your knowledge on the limit features is more extensive than mine. So what we'll do is I'll let you go with the flow, and anything that I feel maybe some of you may not understand, I'll just ask questions on. And
Cool.
yeah, and we'll do it like that and see how we go. And hopefully some people will be a bit ask some questions in the chat and things.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So it's about coming up to time. So I guess, hi, Gary. I've just seen you join in.
Morning. It's not morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. So today's topic is on the limited range feature, and give a bit of a backstory on where this has come out. Essentially, it's well, the way I like to interpret it, or the way I first tried to understand it, was it's similar to like an audio compressor or an overpressure valve. So it basically keeps the variables within a certain parameter for the recipe, and it will sort of help you control bars and pressure. And of course, we know that if we change anything in bars and pressure, it will also change the flow. So I guess this is just an introduction on what you will see when this feature is turned on, be that visually on the graph, i.e. what is represented in terms of flow and bar pressure when it is occurring, why it is useful, and also what you should be doing when you see certain scenarios. So we'll be running through some examples of over and under extraction, and quite possibly a extraction that that doesn't have the feature on, so you know what to look for when it's not on as well. So Shin has very kindly joined us this week, so I'm very excited to pick his brain and see what he's got in store for us. I feel we've all got a lot to learn off Shin. Obviously he's been on the DE1 platform for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years now, Shin?
4 years, yeah.
4 years, wow. And personally myself, I've only been on the journey for 8 months, and I'm only really touching on the advanced stuff now. I only feel comfortable with the sort of basic profiles and understanding the features there. So I think this is a real good opportunity to see how you can transition from a basic profile to sort of learning more of the advanced steps and what we can achieve from there. So I'll let Shin take a few words in what he will be doing today. And yeah, so take it away, Shin.
Thank you. So today I'm gonna talk about the basic things about the flow and the pressure. So how we can control the flow and pressure, not in the profile way, but the like 40 matters. For example, the grounds, like ground dial, or like how much we put in the portafilter, the coffee beans, ground coffee beans, how much we put in the portafilter, that kind of thing, so that we can control the flow and the pressure by that way. And then how we can do with that. So if we try to like make the coffee like at the first time with the like unknown beans, we don't know how to adjust the ground, and then it can be like ruined because we have no idea like how the coffee will come out. So what I'm gonna explain is the limiter feature can like save the shot so that you don't have like really bad taste espresso. And then for that, I'm just gonna explain the very basic to what I'm just making. I'm working on a like new profile so that it's all like in together in this like,
yeah,
not like,
and I think that's what I was alluding to, Shin, is that we really want to see your thought path on why you think it would be useful there, and what is the data points you're viewing to make your decision from. If you so for example, you mentioned about how you're just going to do the basics. But I think when we're talking about the basics, let's really sort of think about what you're looking for in terms of, is it over and under, and how the feature is reacting in that way. And I guess you're going to visually show that during your demonstrations.
Yep.
So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, cool. So hopefully, we should know it's really like basic thing. We actually learned and heard about it when we were young. So if this is basket. So if you say this is a basket, we already packed up some coffee in there. Coffee color, something like this. Oh, no, not too bright. There we go. So, and the water comes into the coffee pot and then goes out. That's the basic like espresso making. And but if we zoom this part in, something like this is not just all the same color. Somewhere is some, for example, white one. There you go. Somewhere is there is. Oh, I hate Illustrator. I have to change the color every time. There you go. Like this, there are particles are like packing up the space, something like this. But the particle size are not the same. Sometimes it's smaller, sometimes it's bigger, sometimes, yeah, it's like sharper kind of thing, like this. So water should go through to reach the bottom of the basket. Water should go through these particles to go like to be the coffee, the espresso. So water is going in here. This one here, yeah, something like this. Yeah, there you go. Oh, never mind. So anyway, water is going in here, but we learned when you're young, like rock, stone, and sand. So if there's like big rocks, water can go through easier because there are more space between the rocks, something like this. And if there is like small stones, the water can go through a bit harder because the space between the stones is smaller. But if there is sand, the water harder can go through because there is like kind of no space. That kind of thing. It just works the same in the espresso world, not only in espresso, but all the coffee brewings. So it's quite very simple. So if you dial the coffee grinder quite fine, then the gap between the like grounds are smaller because the grounds are fine. So the water cannot go through easily. But if you grind like coarser, then the gap between the coffee particles are bigger, so water can go out. Excuse me. Easily. So I just want to make the color. So I just want to make the big particle. And it's there you go. It's blue. And small particle is red. There you go. And another thing is, if we pack this space up more, then the water can go through, like, water cannot go through easily. Because if there is like this amount of coffee, water can just kind of freelord on this much. But if we fill this up with the ground, water cannot go through this much anymore, so that water just goes through like slower than before, so slower than this one. So if we dose more, the flow rate and the flow rate goes like slower. If we put like less coffee in there, then the flow rate goes faster. So it's the same like big particle and small particle. So we can put more of those on here. And this is blue as well. And nope. Those on here. This is blue because we put less It's more easier for water to go through. So this one is red. Oh, there you go. And what happens next? If we set the flow rate profile, so we set the flow rate at the same, like flat flow rate profile, for example, like 3 milliliter per second, then the pressure just changes automatically in this and espresso machine. And the other machines as well. The other machines are set the other machines controls the pressure by the flow actually. They don't set the pressure at the same. Because for example, if I say rocket R58, so this has got 30 milliliter per second for it. Yeah. They don't really control by the pressure because the pumps doesn't build up the pressure. Pump does make the flow rate, but we put the resistance, for example, coffee pot, so that the flow, this fastness of the flow cannot go through, so that the pressure builds up because they have to use the flow, the power of the speed of the water to something else, so that the pressure builds up instead. And yeah, it just builds up as how the resistance makes. But the pressure gauge only shows the kind of pressure at the pump, so that it usually just shows like 9 bar. But if the pressure can go above 9 bar, the gauge just kind of goes up though, but we cannot really see the pressure at the group head. Yeah, but so at the pre-infusion step of this kind of machine, they do 30 milliliter per second per infusion. And then after that, the flow rate is just made by the resistance. But we have no idea how fast it is unless you use the like Bluetooth scale or something, which can track the like real time like coffee into the cup weight. Yeah. And then descent can control the like flow rate at the pre-infusion step up to 8 milliliter per second, but it made like automatically. But we can set the flow rate. For example, 2.2 is quite idle flow rate. Yeah. So it's up to this one. If the particle is big and the amount of those is like less, then the flow goes like fast. But if the particle is smaller and there's more dose, the flow rate goes like slower. But in this case, we just set the flow rate, so it doesn't go fast or slower. But instead of that, the pressure changes. Yeah, it's just up to this as well. So the blue, in the blue case, the pressure goes lower. The red case, pressure goes like higher. Yeah, but opposite way is we can set the pre-infusion at the same, but if it's like pressure profile, flow changes instead of the pressure because we already set the pressure. So in blue case, flow goes faster, and the red case, flow goes slower. Yeah.
Hey, Shin, I just want to stop you because I think you touched on, we've talked about flow, but now we're also talking about bars. So I recently discovered that the what if is basically a change of parameters for one, like i.e. just flow or just bars. But I guess what we're touching upon now is this feature kind of helps us control both, but we also know that they are in close relations to each other. So am I correct in assuming that the limit feature now enables us to control both the pressure and also the flow rate in the same recipe? Is that correct?
I actually checked I think you're talking about the flow profile, which can control the flow and pressure, but I just checked the profiles like quite deeply. But it actually has the flow goal, and then it has got the pressure limit, but they works like the limit, both are working like limit.
Right. So they work together, but not at the same time. So is that you mean? Ah, okay. Yes, I understand now. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting into it. I'll be
Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. Totally fine. Totally fine. So this is actually the basic thing. This is very basic. So if we understand this, we can understand why we made the limiters feature. So, why is it no color? There you go. So now we know like how the flow rate and pressure changes by the like grinder dial. And then now we need to understand that what's the limit that flow can be changed or pressure can be changed at the same flow rate or same pressure. Yeah, it's actually up to the grinder dial as well. If we make it like too fine or we put too much coffee into it, and then we set 2.2 milliliter per second, but it may not like reach the flow rate because there should be enough space that water can go through at the 2.2 milliliter per second speed. But if there is no enough space for that, then the water may just can go through like 1.5 milliliter per second, for example. But instead, the pressure goes crazy high. We have limits on the special machine. It's like if the pressure tries to go more above like 15 bars, it just rejects. The machine just drop the flow rate, so it cannot like try more than that. So that's kind of like automatic, like what I can say, original limit of the machine. So 15 bar is the limit of the machine has. So you cannot control the 15 bar because that's kind of like one machine can do, yeah, at the maximum. But the shot is actually kind of ruined already because we said we want this speed, but the machine only can do this speed. Yeah. So in this case, it's red. Yeah. And it's red. And opposite of that, if we set the pressure profile at 6 bar, but the machine cannot reach 6 bar when the particle is too big. So there are too many space that water can go through. So the flow goes like, for example, 6 milliliter per second. And our limit is actually 9 milliliter per second. Well, you only can set like 8 though. So that's kind of like flow limit that the machine has. Oh, there you go. And for example, pressure only, we set the pressure at 6 bar, but only it reaches like, for example, 4 bar at the 9. So in that case, this is blue because the part when it happens when the particle is big or the dosage is too small. Yeah. But if we think can we make like blue case with this one? Actually, no, because we cannot set the minimum pressure for the extraction because we already set the flow rate as the goal. So if we try to like lower the pressure, we have to change the flow rate as well because if we say like minimum pressure at 4 bar, but the shot can make like 6 bar at 2.2 milliliter per second. That's already it. If we try to make 4 bar from there, the flow rate should go lower, but it's flow profile, so we cannot change that. So blue case cannot do anything for the pressure limit. Like it's the same. Red case cannot go anything for that because if we set the pressure, we cannot like lower the flow rate. We have to keep the flow rate, keep the pressure goal on here. So if we, for example, if we set the 6 bar, But if we try to make the flow slower, if, for example, if we set like 6 bar and the flow is 3 meter per second in the case, but if we try to like make the flow rate lower, the pressure should go lower. So the pressure goal is ruined in the case. So we cannot do that. So we can only work this way. So small particles only like works on here, and bigger particles only works on here. Flow limit. That's it. And then another thing here is it's easy to control blue case. Yeah, for example, there are quite a lot of profiles that controls this, because when you say like channeling, it usually happens when the shot is fast. Yeah. So if we like, if the shot goes like faster than 2.5 meters per second, there is higher possibility that you see the channeling. Then you set the flow rate at 2.2 or 3 or lower than that. Yeah. So it's easy to control the blue case to control. So that's because you can just set the flow rate lower than like 2.3 meters per second. That's it. You don't see the like the channeling, or even though the pressure can go low, but anyway, you can just control the flow rate. So you can still get the time goal. Because if you set the 2.2 or 2.3 meter per second, I'll just say 2.2. And if you had like 4 meters per second, oh, this one first, 4 meters per second, pre-infusion, and then 2.2 at hold. Then it'll take about like 10 seconds to finish the pre-infusion. And then if we try to make like 36 grams as a goal, we calculate. Oh, there you go. 36, 2.2. It'll take 16 seconds-ish. So total of 26 seconds. So it's still in the acceptable range. Yeah, 2.3 as well. It'll take like 20 something seconds. And even slower than that. Yeah. So it's okay. If we can set the flow profile, then the shot won't be ruined, even though the pressure goes lower. But the problem is the red case is the problem. It's hard to control. Red. Hard to control. It's really, really hard to control. So if the shot goes like, if you set the like dial at the really fine, and if you put a lot of coffee in there, then the shot goes really slow and the pressure goes really high. In that case, we cannot control anything, because if we tries to higher the flow rate, the pressure goes even higher, and then eventually it'll stop at here, and then flow cannot go even above than that. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. That's actually really hard to control anything in the case. But we actually have one way to solve the issue. We actually call the blooming as we have to grind finer. Yeah. If we think like opposite way, if we change the position, if we grind finer, we need to use the blooming. Yeah. So because if we go back here, firstly, if there is another way to control this one is pre-infusion step, because at the pre-infusion step, if we fill up this space enough, there are gonna be like more water path, so that at the hold step, the water can go through easier. So if we set the pre-infusion like flow rate lower, then the pre-infusion total time of the pre-infusion is gonna be like more, so that there are like more chance for the water to fill up the space between the particles. And if we like set the like flow rate at the pre-infusion higher, then before we fill up the space between the particles, it'll fill up the head space first, then the pressure will be rise, so that the pressure and the like flow rate during the hold step, pressure will be higher and the flow rate at the hold step will be like slower, because there are not enough water path that water can go through. So the water should fill the like gap between the particles during the coffee is coming out. Yeah, so that we can add slower pre-infusion. Where's E in here? And faster pre-infusion here. Faster pre-infusion. And the blooming here actually uses really, really slow pre-infusion. We call it just infusion because there is 4 meters per second pre-infusion and then 0 meters per second infusion. It's confusing, but we can just call it pre-infusion and we can call the 0 meters per second as infusion. It's not infusion actually. We don't put more water, but still the water inside of the basket kind of like moves to fill up the space between the particles during the hold stage, the post stage. So in that case, we fill the like particles, like the space between the particles up enough, so the flow rate can go higher and pressure can go lower. Yeah. Good. Blue and red. Yeah. So there is just one way to control the red case. Yeah. Now we go for the limiter. Yeah. We already know there is a limiter like 50 bars and 9 meters per second, but we can set better limiter. But I already explained that if we like try to slower the flow rate at the 6 bar, we have to like change the like pressure goal, right? Because if we change the flow like slower, the pressure goes the like lower. So we actually firstly do that for at the limiter. So if there is pressure limiter, and this is red as well. Yeah, because we don't need any pressure limiter for the blue case, because pressure limiter is at like is for like don't go higher than that. So unless there is like no stoppage, then it doesn't go higher anyway. So it limits the set the actually no. First change the flow slower. And flow limiter is limiter change the pressure or yeah. That's it. So for example, if we want to do for example 2.3 meter per second profile, but the pressure goes at like we don't want higher than 9 bar pressure, so it's the limit. In that case, even though we don't reach 2.3 meter per second, if the pressure tries to go higher than 8 bar, it controls the flow slower. Yeah. Not to go higher than 8 bar. Like this. Yeah. This is the same. We just need to change the path. That's it. And limit here. So let's reach 8 bar. 2.3 meter per second. 2.3 meter per second. Right. That's it. Yeah. So in that way, we basically don't ruin the shot. But actually, the pressure limit does something, but it makes the flow slower, so that the total extraction time goes longer. So that's, I'm not sure why. Yeah, we have the pressure for limiter, but we just need to control the dial or the pre-infusion time. Yeah, something like this. And then we also can see a great feature, which is called deflow. Did you want to do the deflow, Paul?
Yeah, we can discuss it for sure. I don't see why not. I think it's if you think it'll be useful in explaining things and how we've integrated it, I think it'll be a good addition. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, and can you see this program, DE1 app on the screen?
Not currently, no.
No, just a second.
You might have to remove this screen or share that. Yeah.
Oh, I cannot share the. Oh, there you go. Can you see now?
No, you might have to, yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah, there you go. The deflow profile is created by the Damien. He does beautiful things. So basically, we're gonna discuss about this too later. And then basically we can set 2 limits, flow limits or pressure limits, and pressure limits actually. So if anything reach first, that's gonna be the limit. So if we see here, I already explained that we can set the pressure limit when in the red case, when the particle is small and we put more dose and the pre-infusion fast. And then we can set the flow limit when in the blue case, when the particle is big and we put small dose and pre-infusion is slow. So the flow limit works in the blue case, pressure limit works in the red case. So if the particle, if the flow tries to go fast, it just stuck at 2 meters per second. The profile makes that, and then the pressure controls automatically. And if the pressure tries goes to higher than 8.5 bar in the case, then the limiter works and flow just changes automatically. And you can edit on here and here, here and here as well. And then another limiter is on here. Yeah, this is actually the limiter as well, the stopwater weight. So if you set this goal, then the shot will stop automatically at 40 grams. The espresso is 40 grams, then the shot will be stopped at automatically. and you can set the volume goal as well. If the machine used like for example 40 grams, 40 milliliters, then the shower will stop automatically. Like this. But you cannot control this step, infuse step actually. But there is another limit on here, the weight limit. So during the infuse step, if the coffee come out like this much, or we use this much of water, then the infusion step automatically stops and then it moves to the pour step. Yeah. But we cannot control the pressure at the infusion step. So it's, for example, it does like if the fastest pre-infusion at first, because we set the pressure goal at the pre-infusion. So descent, 1 second. Yeah, descent measure the pressure at the group head. So if there is no, like if this space is not filled up, so there is no pressure because something should resist the water flow, then there can be pressure. But if there is nothing, then water can just fill up. So there is no pressure. So in the case, if we set the pressure goal, the machine tries to like reach the pressure by like giving the fastest flow. So in the case, the flow is at the fastest, but the pressure is actually there, but it just shows as 0 though. And then infuse step, it does 3 bar infuse. So this is why the we have to grind quite finer for this profile. So if the grind is not fine enough, it'll just extract at the infuse step because there is 3 bar. 3 bar is quite like okay bar to make coffee. Yeah. And then there's pour step. So if we like run quite fine enough, then it'll go to the pour step, and then we can control the extraction by the limiters. Yeah. And then it'll stop here. And there is the temperature. You can set the temperature at infuse step and pour step as well. So we can see the examples of shots from the other users. And I'll show you some examples. Where is search? Give me a second. There you go. The flow. Yep. Can you see the Chrome page here? Is the Chrome page on?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Website. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can find the flow limiter working profile by the extraction time. So if the extraction time is short, that means the flow limiter worked. And if the extraction time is long, that means the pressure like limiter is on. So if you see there is 23.5 seconds, it's quite slow. It's quite fast. If you see in here. It's too fast actually. I actually told you that if we don't grind finer, then it'll just make coffee. Yeah, at the 3 bar step. But actually 4 grams limiter worked in the case. So it hit 4 grams, it just moved to the next step. Yeah. And the flow limit, he said the flow at 2.4 actually. Yeah, so the extraction is fast. And it seems like from here to here, from here to maybe here, the pressure limiter kind of worked.
Yeah.
And he seemed like set the pressure limiter at 6.5 or something. Yeah, but this is not a good example, sorry. This one here is good one. Yeah. So in that case, we can clearly see the pressure limiter worked because the flow rate didn't reach the goal flow rate, but the pressure like limiter, he said it at like 8.5 though, it went up to 8.3 7 to 9. Yeah. So he ground fine enough, so it didn't make it like that much of coffee, and it had like quite acceptable infusion time, like about 10 seconds. And then yeah, the pressure limiter was on, but the flow limiter was off. Yeah. But actually told you about the profile, but this profile actually set the flow rate goal and then set the pressure as the limiter. Yeah, so it's actually not the flow limiter and the pressure limiter are working together, but it's just pressure limiter at the flow rate.
Yes.
Like profile.
And I guess you can see that from the actual wiggliness of the pressure.
Right.
So I think that's also a good signal. Then confirmed by the lower flow rate than expected. Yeah, that's quite clear. That's definitely clear. And if we compare to the last graph you had, where they were, it was the opposite, and they were under extracting. Under extracting. Yeah, the grind was too coarse. We can kind of see the opposite, right?
Right.
To a certain extent. The pressure is not as wiggly; it's a little bit more smoother. But we can see the flow rate. The gram in cup was immediately quite high straight after the ramp.
Right.
So these, I guess, are the clues that you were looking for when the feature kicks in, and I guess. For example, this graph, we would obviously grind finer, as Shin has suggested, and hopefully elongate the infusion time to perhaps get that 4 grams to drip a bit slower. So even though the parameters weren't hit, this shot would still be okay. But I guess we could say it's in the ballpark. The limiter feature worked and got a decent cup that you wouldn't put in the sink, essentially, and gives you data to fine tune from there. So yeah, that's great to see those graphs. And what is apparent to me is that the limits that are set are very intentional. So you were mentioning about the grams in cup during infusion, and also the pressure exits. These are, I guess, if you're reviewing your graphs, you would look back into your recipe or preset and see, okay, why did it come out at that? Okay, it came out at 3 bars. And then sharply inclined. So you would then go back into your recipe to double confirm. And I think that's what a lot of us had done as we've learned on the DE1 throughout our journey. You know, we're perhaps asked on the forum for initial input, and then they may ask, oh, what was it in your, did you change anything in your profile? And then you discover yourself that way. So yeah, this is great stuff, Shin, and I think it's great to sort of see you also explaining it on the graph as well as the theory behind. The theory behind was very interesting in especially with the latest point you put out in the blooming step. And I personally, I'd never really thought about solving that problem with a blooming step. And I guess, and I did actually read your profile that you put out. And I guess that's kind of what you're alluding to, and you can use that blooming sort of style to help you in those situations.
Yeah. For the red case.
Yeah.
So I was like working on the new profile. I may call it I got your back. I like it won't like fail for the any case, because there are a lot of like profiles that user made for the blue case, fast flow. So that they can just control the flow to slower so that the shot won't be ruined. But for this one, I only can see the blooming and some Damien's works, the LV something. Yeah. But what if we can control both at the same time? If we can put the blooming in the shot and then non-blooming in the same profile, then it'll be really great. So I put the 2.2 milliliter per second flow shot with blooming. It's something weird, but we have limiter features so we can make it. So this is the advanced like step profiling page. So pre-efficient is the same, is quite like classic 4 meter per second. And like if the pressure is higher than 4.0 bar, then it'll move like to the next step. Then next step is like low resistance. If the resistance is like low, the blue, then it'll just do the flow shot, 2.2 meter per second. But if the resistance is high, that means the flow rate goes like lower. So if the flow rate is like under 1.5 meter per second, then it moves to the next step. It doesn't do 2.2 meter per second shot, but it just moves to the next step. Next step is pulse, something like blooming. So it'll just pulse. And then if the pressure is under 3.0 bar, it'll move to the next step. But I'm thinking of removing the time or like longer time, something like 1 minute, because I tried with like extremely fine setting and the pressure goes like up to 15 bar. And then if I set 30 seconds, it'll like move to the next step at 30 seconds. But at this point, it cannot make 2.2 meter per second. So I have like more time to infuse to make the like more water pot. So I'm just gonna higher the time and then make this pressure as the trigger. Yeah. And then there's ramp. It's the same like the blooming. It'll smoothly ramp up the flow up to like 2.2, and then it'll do the shot with 2.2. Yeah. And then there is pressure limit, 8.6. Yeah. This working quite okay. But I actually made another like limit for the move on if. I just want to set the flow and the pressure together. Yeah, pressure, for example, because it takes longer to like be made. Because 1 second, I think I can show you. There you go. This is the shot that I made today with the profile. So there is like there was pre-infusion, and then as you can see, the pressure went up to 15 bar, the limit. And during this stage, the checking like kind of is called like low resistance, but it's kind of like checking the flow. If the flow can make like 2.2, it just keeps, but the flow is like goes lower than 1.5, it moves to the blooming. But this is kind of too long. It went like for 4 seconds on this step. But if I can set the pressure like limit at here, for example, like 8 bar, then it would like move to the next stage at 12 seconds. So it'll took 2 seconds. So that if we can set the pressure and the flow as the trigger, that would be like nicer for like making this profile work. Yeah. So the blooming was there because I ground too fine. Yeah. So that it went up to like 15 bar, and then if there was no blooming, then it would just like go this, and then the flow goes like struggling in there. But the pressure trigger worked to move to the next step at the blooming stage, so that there was ramp, but the ground was too fine, still too fine, so that it cannot reach the flow rate that I wanted, the 2.2, but there was like pressure limiter, so it didn't like squeeze a lot during the like extraction stage. Yeah, it can't work like this. And if I, yeah, there you go. Oh, it's too fast. yeah, this is kind of like ruined shot, but anyway, if I set the ground like it's too coarse, but if I can set the ground like coarse enough, there won't be the blooming stage, but it'll just keep making coffee with like 2.2 million per second. Cool. Yeah, so it can work.
Ah, so it becomes a flow based then instead of
Yeah.
a
Blooming.
based.
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, I see, I see.
So it can make the coffee like great coffee with like fine setting or like coarse setting. Yeah, but I have to put the limiter in there too. Actually, that's it for like my thing.
Yeah. I'm interested in when you're setting, let's say you're setting limits on your pressure. I've had instances where I've played around with the limiter a little bit, and I just wanted to see what it did. And sometimes when you set the pressure to, let's say you wanted to stop it at 9 bar, and you've set your grind to fine, but then when you pulling the shot, it obviously exceeds over maybe 10 to 13 bar, and obviously the pressure bar is very linear, a very straight line afterwards. And then you're thinking, okay, I set it to 9, but it only stopped about 10, maybe 11, maybe 13, 13. What is the reason why if you set it at 9, it doesn't actually stop at 9, but rather usually it will go overshoot a little bit? Is there anything we can do with the flow limiter to stop it overshooting so much, or is it something to do with your own range that you want to put in? Do you get what I mean?
You mean the pressure limiter or the flow limiter?
Pressure limiter. So
you set the flow goal and the pressure, make the pressure limiter working, right?
Yes.
So you set the pressure limiter at 9 bar, but the pressure eventually went up to like 10 bar, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually up to Ray. There's nothing we can do because we already told the machine to not go above 9 bar, but the machine went above 9 bar.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's up to Ray.
Okay.
That's kind of like formula thing, I think.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm alluding to is how would we get that value to be more within our range? So I suppose what we're alluding to is we would, instead of putting 9 bar, just doing a simple benchmark. If it went over 1 to 1.5, we would set it back down to 8 bar, for example, to keep it within that range. So I guess this is part in what you're saying is a programming thing that the app is calculating, and perhaps is a slight delay, or maybe it's difficult to be that accurate. I mean, it's quite foreseeable for us to presume that if we do change the pressure, a little bit of change will be a very big change for the extraction. So it could be quite possible that it's a very difficult thing to program in, and this is the range that we're working with. But I don't really see it as a big problem. We do it with calibrating ourselves with our recipe. So we would just put it down to 8 bar, and hopefully it won't go beyond 9.5, for example, from what we discussed. And
if I go like kind of deeper on that, so
cool.
That should be like how our temperature works. So Ray programs the temperature to work according to the flow rate. So if the flow rate is fast, the temperature doesn't try to heat up too much. So it controls the cold pump and hot pump to keep the temperature cool as much as you can. But when the temperature the flow rate is quite low, the temperature tries to build up more than when the flow rate is fast, because it'll, like, for example, when the temperature is quite low, it'll try to heat up more. So that when there is like quite fast enough flow rate, if we heat up the water at the maximum and then send the phosphorate with the hot water, then the temperature will eventually go even higher than the goal.
Yeah.
But when so that we have to control the cold pump to make the water not too hot. So if we put that kind of thing into the limiter thing, then we can work it better, because if we, as your example, even though we set the pressure like limiter at 9 bar, if the pressure goes up to 10 bar, that means the pressure limiter should be triggered like earlier than that.
Yes, yeah.
So that if we can set the like pressure limiter according to the like current like condition of the shot, then we can work it out actually. Yeah, so that means it's up to Ray.
Yeah, I mean, just been leading up to the Zoom, I have been playing around with it a bit more, and I found that just that simple recalibration of tried it and it overshot by so much. You just take off how much it's overshot by, and in general, it will move you back into where you want to be for that profile. And since having it on now on these profiles and pulling shots day to day, I'm finding where it's most useful now for me is if the bean is suddenly aging and it's changing its characteristics, i.e. changing its grind from day to day. I'm finding that I can see this physical change of the beans simply because the limiter feature is coming on. It's really fascinating to me because I've spent a lot of my time trying to standardize my puck prep to make sure everything is as consistent as it can be, and to all of a sudden realize that the machine is picking up on things that I may have not ever picked up upon on a analog machine. I think is really improving my consistency from day to day on one batch. Where I found it not so useful is when I'm changing batch to batches and it comes in and it's that information to me is not as useful to me. But where it is useful is when you're learning about how your puck prep or how your recipe is affecting your extractions. And I think it's a very good tool to learn when your shots are under and over extracting. One of the things that I pick up on without looking at the graph, because I'm normally pulling maybe 3 to 4 shots in one go. So I might have a shot running and then preparing my next shot. And I'm very attuned to the sound of the pumps. So, when you have a fast flow rate of 8 milliliters per second as opposed to 4.5, the pre-infusion noise is a lot different. And you can, with repetition, you will find that you will notice that the sound of your pumps will change when the limiter feature kicks in. And it kicks in more the more extreme your error is, or your variable, i.e. you ground too coarse or you ground too high. And it's that very characteristic noise. And and when you're familiar with that noise, you know exactly what is going on, and you can confirm with the graph. But where I've experienced a lot of people coming back to me, especially with the emails and user problems, is my machine's making this weird noise. I don't know what's going on. My flow is going crazy. I think there's something wrong with my machine. And I think it's a very valid point for them to think, there's something going wrong because maybe the machine's updated and it's put it on there and the machine's not acting as it should, as expected. So
that's like just right before explosion.
Yeah. And I mean, it's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you, Shin, where a new feature is already updated, and you're wondering, is it something I've done? Is it the machine, or is it So I think, getting familiar with this feature is definitely one way of using it more. I think I was very shy on using it and having the belief that, my technique and I can manipulate the grind to not use this feature. But when moving on to, let's say, faster profile shots like the Rao Allonge, I found that it is more efficient for me to use this pressure limiter feature because I will waste less beans. And I wouldn't say it's more of the quality is obviously more consistent and is better. But in terms, for me, I'm seeing it more efficient because I can see the data, I can see the reaction, and because we know what the limiter is doing, we can change with even more confidence with our recipe or our grind setting.
Yeah, right.
And the more you use it, the more you notice the little dips in the flow rate, or maybe the increase in the flow rates that are very subtle. And these points are most notable during the rise and hold phase. So let's take the example of if your grind is too coarse. If your grind is too coarse, what will the limiter try to do? As Shin has explained, if the flow is too fast, it's basically the DE1 app is trying to increase the flow to build more pressure. And that is the key point here. The flow rate going into the group head, added with the resistance of the coffee puck, is what makes the pressure. So that is the one means in which the flow limiter will execute when it detects low pressure, especially during the rise and hold phase. And the opposite is true for when your grind is too fine. It will try to reduce the flow rate to not cause the pressure to rise so much, or to rise above the point at which the limiter is set. And when it is more subtle, instead of a smooth gradient going down from the ramp up in terms of the flow rate, you will see either a dip in the curve or either a rise. And depending on how extreme the variable is, will depend on how much that dip or rise will be. And it can be quite subtle, can't it, Shin? Especially if you're already quite tuned into your grinder. It can be really subtle. But if you're really familiar with a blend and you've really fine-tuned it, you will notice these differences that the limiter will kick in. Most notably when it's gone a bit too fine. It won't be as smooth, and the aftertaste will be a bit more sort of rough on the palate. But when you get it right, and if the limiter feature has not had too great of an effect on the extraction, i.e. the pressure and the flow, then more often than not, that shot is very drinkable. And that's where the flow limiter excels, in my opinion. It's when you're in the ballpark, and it gives you that extra means to really fine tune from there. And what Shin has enlightened me on is I guess in the pre-infusion part, in terms of if your grind size particles are too small, or if your dose is too much, and there's too great of a resistance. But going back onto the blooming bit, Shin, I would feel that if you had more dose, and your grind setting was not on the extremely fine side, I could really see the blooming part working. Where I would have a bit of reservation would be if it was too small to the point where you're just, maybe if you've got a little bit of a darker bean and you're pulling almost everything out of the bean. So I'd be really interested to see how that works with a light roast bean, and I think that would really work and complement the styles of light roast, especially with the blooming portion, for sure. but I think the issue with light roast is not on it's too fine. It's more of are we grinding fine enough for these long pre-infusions?
Right.
And I think that's a really good takeaway. In the longer your pre-infusions are, in general, the finer you are going. And I think is that just due? I guess it's just to hold the pressure of the blooming, or I guess the longer times, I guess, right? So to fully saturate and start the extraction process before the ramp up. And that's really interesting too. I'm just really sort of speaking out loud, but I'm thinking along the lines of the longer pre-infusions was developed so we could extract more efficiently, i.e. higher TDS. And if, let's say, you are using lighter roast, that's what I mean by it's complementing that sort of style of bean. But if it is darker or more stale, I would feel this would be a little bit a negative point towards the quality in cup.
Right.
Yeah. But that's really fascinating how you've applied blooming to the limiter and building a program to kind of take advantage of this feature and
right.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. I was actually on the train when I was reading that profile, Shin, and I looked at the graph that you put out, and I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool. And I was really trying to understand what you were doing, and I think it was more of a proof of concept before really fine tuning it. I can really see the potential of what you're trying to achieve in that. You basically trying to use the limiter and the techniques that we've used to
not to fail anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's really great to see how people have used this feature in such an advanced way now. I feel like I'm always playing catch up sometimes, Shin. Like some of the features come out and then like, okay, I'll learn this feature and then Diaspora just explodes up and everyone has all these ideas and applying it to their own profiles. I just think it's absolutely amazing.
Actually, me too. It's actually picking up from the other profiles that recently released.
Yes, exactly.
This one here, because the Rails like blooming doesn't have this feature, but this feature is made by I forgot, but yeah, someone in the Diaspora. Yeah. This is like kind of new for me, so why not I put it in the like new profile. So it's kind of like hopping of like everything.
Well, I to be honest, I've only just started to play with the move-ons and ifs. I've really sort of dissected pre-infusion a little bit, and now I'm sort of moving on to the more advanced stuff. And I've learned a little bit from you today in the way you're setting your move on ifs and your flow in relation to pressure. I think that's what really confused me a little bit in the start in trying to understand how the flow and pressure in terms of the limit feature was working. It's from our discussions today, it really sounds more like it's kind of like a move on if, but it's in relation to the extraction. So as you've identified, you can't lower the flow rate without affecting the pressure. So it favors which one is more important according to that scenario, depending if it's under extraction. Therefore, we would try to increase the pressure via the flow. And the opposite would say for the other. So yeah, that's really been eye-opening for me, how the flow relates to the pressure, but also how this limiter feature essentially reduces your need to program further steps. So in my mind, it's complicating things to a little bit, but making things easier for you to find what you're looking for with your shot, whether it being, once you found your grind, you can really sort of start manipulating your shots from there, because you know that your parameters that you've hit is on point. And that goes back to my point on using it as a learning tool and a way to hone your skills. You become more confident in what you're changing. And it's a great foundation at the end of the day. If you understand flow, if you how it relates to the pressure, you can really sort of maximize the efficiency of each step, whether it being pre-infusion, the dripping, for lighter roast, for example, or for example in the ramp up for fast flow rates in like for profiles like Rao Langer. It's very versatile and keeps things simple in terms of programming your recipes. So it's pretty mind-blowing, Shin, to say the least. Coming from backgrounds of not even using a scale to training your eye to we're utilizing our scale for consistency, and now really deciding what's going on in the group. It's fascinating to me, and we're now talking about how the shots will be adapting to your settings is just mind-blowing altogether. And I think we'll see a lot more higher quality coffee coming into the future for sure. And I think a lot of the hardcore coffee drinkers may have had the same mindset as me, in that they may not have found it as useful. But I think in terms of elevating the quality of coffee in general, I think this is one of the tools that will help in terms of that. And as we all know, with better quality coffee, we always seek to find out why. And then I think the education of how we have got to this point with the DE1 will come naturally. So it's fascinating. I'm curious to find out as well, Shin, how have you essentially come to this profile in your design? Was it purely like, just from your name, I got your back? It kind of tells me like you're trying to create a profile that may be similar to Gentle and Sweet, in that it's just for a profile for new people coming to coffee, perhaps. And you want them to feel like they've got a good experience from the first go. So what was the I guess what was the specifications for the design of this profile? Was it just purely to test out the limiter feature, and could it work, or did you already have something that was very successful that you thought, oh, I'm going to try that and explore? I'm kind of get into your mind here.
Okay. Because this one is just for the newbies, actually. Yes. And then the high-trained baristas who wants to know how to use the advanced feature and how to control, especially the move on if and the limiter feature on here at the last. So it kind of contains everything. Gentle and Sweet is quite like recommended profile that for the newbies, but this can fail. Gentle and Sweet can fail. Where is Gentle and Sweet? Can I find it? Oh, there you go. Yeah, this is Gentle and Sweet. So this can fail because the limit of the pressure is 6 bar. So that means the flow can be changed automatically, so that the flow can go really high. And especially the limit of flow is 4 milliliter per second, because this pre-infusion step is 4 milliliter per second. So if we change the limit of flow lower, then the pre-infusion won't be made at the 4 milliliter per second. So it should be this one is kind of like minimum that we can set. And 4 milliliter per second flow is quite fast, actually, because if we try to get 36 grams, it'll just only take 9 seconds. So even though the pre-infusion step took 10 seconds, the total of the extraction time will be 19 seconds. So this Gentle and Sweet can fail, actually. So it's not really perfect, like profile for the newbies, especially who doesn't know how to dial the grinder like properly. But this is quite familiar to the new users who already experienced with like the other espresso machine, because it shows the pressure instead of the flow. If we use this flow profile, which can do something like this. Actually, this is the best profile that never fails unless you grind it really fine.
Yeah.
Because there is already a flow setting, so it won't go fast anymore. So, but it's not quite familiar to the users who already use the other machines, because no machine can show the flow rate in real time.
It's quite interesting. You also mentioned that this is the best profile to visualize it from, and I also personally myself would introduce people to using the flow profile to practice their grind changes, because you can really see whether it's because the graph is being decided as you're pulling the shot and they're more focused on it. But I feel like they learn more because they can really see the visual effect they're having when they're changing their grind. And as Shin has identified, you know, the grind setting is the only thing that is going to change the pressure here. The flow rates have set. So if you're looking for a profile to practice on, this a flow profile is the one to go. You can decide for yourself what pressure you want to go for, whether it be 9, 7, or 8. You know, and you just change your grind to get that flow rate at that bars. So that's a great talking point as well. You know, finding a profile on here that you can use to practice your grind changing. Yeah.
So actually, this is my favorite profile, and I can just change the flow rate on the previous step as I want to. But I figured out that if I grind too fine, then I cannot make this profile even like with like this profile, good coffee with this profile. So I decided to add the blooming like profile into this profile. So that I can control the too fine setting as well, and then I can make the good coffee with the too fine grind setting. That's why I just made this one, so that it doesn't fail even though the grind is too coarse and grind is too fine. It won't be fail. That's it actually. But it can, like, people can learn from this profile because I use flow under and pressure over, and there's a limiter and everything is in there. So
and I think that's what everyone wants to get there, Shin. Like, you've identified the issue that you've had with your profile, and then you've gone into an advanced profile and used the data points that you want from that profile, i.e. the flow rates. But then you've essentially added the 2 steps, i.e. 2 and 3, to program in the what ifs for the blooming portion. And I think that is, I guess, where I would class you as an advanced user, because you're now not modifying your preset that you're using, you're creating a whole preset for yourself. So that's actually what I was asking, actually, like, why did you come to that point? So you started on the flow profile, realized that there's a potential problem with fine grind settings, and so you've opened up an advanced profile. And for those that don't know, advanced profile, you can control both flow and pressure, and add steps. So if you use a normal one, you'd only get like the 3 main stages at the bottom. But because Shin has opened a advanced profile, he is able to manipulate both pressures and flow with the move on. So I think from the top of my head, you can program, is it 20 steps, Shin? I think it's 20 steps.
Sure, let me check.
Oh, okay.
20.
Yes, 20 steps. So that is a lot of steps. I think in general, you won't go beyond, I don't think I've seen many profiles beyond 10 steps, let's just say, off the top of my head. So you have a lot of flexibility to put in, but as we've mentioned, now that you have the limited ranges of actions, it's a lot more simplified, and you can tie multiple things in one step, or tie 2 or 3 steps to tackle 2 or 3 things.
Right.
So Shin identified the problem, and then went into a advanced profile, brought back the flow limits that he wanted, and then implemented the blooming stage with the move on ifs. And I think that is the mind-blowing fact for me, is that, you know, you're able to think of, okay, that's the problem. What have people done, either the history of DE1 or through the techniques that I know? And for the example, this one was blooming, and then he programmed it in to see what was outcome. Now, you know, you can try some of this stuff, and it may not work, or you may get positive results, and you can work on this profile. But essentially, this is why, you know, people like myself and Shin find this fascinating, because it gives us the tools to be able to explore these areas and to see if we can make improvement. Whether or not it's a positive or negative improvement or not, I think the results are always going to be important, because even if it's bad, you now know that it's a route that is not suitable for the scenario that I've got, and you're always learning from feedback. So that's great to see that insight, Shin, because I'm still in that mindset of what can I change in this profile on a simplistic scale, and go forward that way. But I think I will be delving into trying to do more of this in the future. Yeah, cool, good stuff. So I'm just wondering, if does anyone have any questions for me and Shin in responses to, I don't know, it could be anything, to like, what would we change if we wanted to change, I don't know, I don't know, Shin, I've just got a question. What would, like, let's say, for example, you have a medium light bean, and you pulled it as a raw allongé, but you found it was a little not quite suitable, but you pulled it as a lever, and it was, you know, it wasn't suitable either. How would you like, I guess, where am I going with this? I guess, how would you dictate what flow rate you would use? I guess that would lead into the profiles you would use for that. Do you kind of get what I mean? Like, would you manipulate the flow rate in the raw allongé to become a less of a flow rate, or would you change the profile completely and try from there? And if it was successful, modify the profile from there.
I see. I actually don't like to like create like entire profile. I just want to tweak things.
Yes.
Because I just don't want to, because there is a kind of like certain region that I picked the allongé. I picked the allongé for the flavor kind of thing. So I will taste the coffee, and then if the flavor is not that I want, then I will just change the profile, because if the flavor is too far from that I want, but if the flavor is okay, but if there is like room to like improve the flavor, then I'll just tweak the profile. If, for example, like lower the flow rate, or change the like pressure limit to like higher or something. Yeah. So it's actually up to the flavor.
So I guess it's for lighter roast, we generally say we want a higher flow rate, because we want to draw more of the flavors out from the coffee, because the bean is less soluble. Okay, but what if you had a not so light roasted, but it was kind of medium light, but was pulling a little bit too much as a raw allongé. So I guess what you're saying is you wouldn't lower the flow rate, you would you would change something else in the profile or change the profile completely. Is that what you're saying?
If the taste is too much, then the too much doesn't always means it's like, for example, if medium light, so if I say like there is no bitterness, but it's kind of emptiness of the flavor thing. So for example, if the flavor the flavor that I expect from the coffee is, for example, if there is like fruits and sweetness and the, like, for example, caramel, fruits like nuts and caramel. So if too much can mean like if there is no fruitness and no like nuts, but only the caramel, that means quite too much, because the extraction time goes like longer and longer. Then the flavor from the first can be like covered by the other flavor that comes like after. Yeah. So that means too much. So in that case, I just kind of like lower the stopwater weight, for example. Then I don't like extract this long, so that I can like, I don't need to put like the flavor from the last into the coffee. You know what I mean? I can get the fruitness and the nuts back. So, but if I like lower the flow rate, in that case, the total like extraction time goes like longer. So that is kind of like opposite than like what I want. So I just made like faster the flow rate. Faster the flow rate. Yeah, faster flow rate is okay because there is stop weight, so it'll stop at the same weight, so that the total extraction time is gonna be like shorter. So that kind of thing. So I have to firstly like taste the coffee to figure out what I want. So
yes.
Yeah, but it's like too far from that I want. For example, if I like use it like really nicely roasted coffee, and then there is no flavor, then I may just longer the pre-infusion time by like slower the flow rate. Yeah, the kind of thing. Or I just use the blooming. Yeah.
Yes. I can totally understand why you're doing that, and it makes sense to adjust the volume. And I think why I asked this question is when I've been doing some raw allonges and my grind is too fast. My exiting flow rate is maybe 2 to 2.3, and immediately I see that and the limiter's kicked in, I'm actually stopping the shot as if I'm pulling like almost as if like a turbo shot, like maybe as the extraction's coming out 15 to 20 seconds, and then I'm cutting it short, maybe even pulling 2.5 to 3 to 1. And I'm finding that because I've seen that flow rate come out of this coffee at this grind setting, I'm now pulling those figures out to put into a basic profile. And I found that very useful because obviously the shot has failed as a raw allonge, but because I've seen it come out at certain flow rates and I've stopped it at a certain ratio, I've now got another ballpark to try out with this bean. And that's what I've been finding with a lot of the light roast, because I'm still a little bit reluctant to immediately try light roast with 3-to-1 ratios, simply because of the margin for error is still quite high. So I used to do pour overs to find out what the flavors were beforehand, or grind a little bit of coffee and just like when you're cupping and just pour in a little bit of coffee just to see what it tastes like. But now I'm finding I'm doing that with the raw allonge shot instead, while I find my grind, and then I'm taking notes on what it was a decent shot or not, is it worth exploring at that flow rate. And that's what I've been really doing with the raw allonges, and then moving on to shorter ratios after that. So I was just wondering if you literally outright just change the flow rates on the profile itself, or are you still sort of taking those datas and moving on? So yeah.
can do both. Actually, Long J is quite a like simple profile that doesn't do complicated thing. So as you said, you can just build make new profile. For example, you can also make partial profile according to the data from the Long J that you just pulled out. Yeah, we can do both actually. Yeah, I can do both. Yeah. That's actually a nice idea to try to get the data effort about the bins. Actually, Long J can do really simple thing on there, and then the graph will be drawn, and then you can get the data and then make a new profile that really suitable for the extraction. Okay, cool.
And another thing is you mentioned it's quite a simple profile in which it's super simple. It essentially doesn't even have pre-infusion. It's just straight 4.5 milliliters a second, and I think that's why in part I've been able to gather the data from there. And even though it doesn't have pre-infusion, you can still see with the data going into cup how long pre-infusion will take at 4.5 milliliters a second. So there is a lot of information from the Raoult Longe shot that you can use because it's such a simple profile. So so that is literally what I've been fascinated about Shin recently. Calibrating shots from Raoult Longe and deciding the pre-infusions from there. And I found it to be super useful. So I've been also found a very good data point in lighter roast and dark roast. The way they absorb water is slightly different. I found that the darker will absorb the water a little bit quicker as compared to light roast. But I'm not sure whether that is just due to light roast being harder to extract, and that's what you're seeing instead of full saturation and seeing volume in cup. And this is more from tasting the shots with the same extraction times, but with different roast level of the bean. That's another thing that's great. You kind of experiment, and then you're really questioning what is different from shot to shot, and you can now use your graph to really interpret your data. So that's what I've been working on, and I've been tying pre-infusion with specific doses for each bean in the basket. And I feel that is now where I'm getting a lot of help from the graphs in deciding, am I dosing too much? Is it compressing before ramp up? And I'm really sort of surprised at how much of a difference if your pre-infusion was really smooth without hitch, as compared to it's really struggling, it's not fully saturated. The quality in cup is really quite standout in my opinion. That's maybe another time to discuss. I'd love to pick your brain about it one day, Shin. Maybe we could maybe do another topic on it one day. Okay.
I just want to simply explain about the dark roast and light roast.
Sure.
Just two things. The one thing is they grounds differently. The light roast is kind of hard, and the dark roast is kind of soft. So soft things, like when it's ground, it makes like more like not uniformed particles.
Yes.
Because it just kind of crashes as soon as it hits the board, like the blade. But
smooth, right?
Hard ones, it kind of like cut it off with like less fine. And then the other thing is, dark roast has like it's about the solubility, but dark roasted ones has got like firstly bigger molecular like materials in there, and then secondly, it's eventually has got like more moleculars that can have the flavor, like intensive flavor than the light ones. it's more important than the solubility because it's not like more soluble, but it has got like more soluble materials. Yeah, it's just a bit different.
Are you referring to fines, or are you talking about something else?
Molecules.
Yeah. Okay.
Bigger molecules can usually have like heavier like texture and more like intensive like flavor. Yeah, but not intensive, it's not flavor, but intensive aroma. Yeah, but intensive flavor, it can be like acidity and the bitterness, but the sweetness is not really intensive, but the molecules is bigger, usually bigger than the acidic things. Yeah, but the aroma is quite obvious. The heavier ones are like quite more intensive than the lighter ones. Yeah. I think that's more important than, because we actually are not sure about the solubility of the coffee, but we can figure out like how intensive it is by the tasting the coffee. Yeah, but that doesn't always mean the solubility is higher. But that means that the coffee can have more soluble, not even more soluble, because if the molecules are really big, then yeah, that's a different story. But anyway, yeah, that's the thing. It's not always the solubility, but it can have more intensive flavored things in there. Yeah. So if it's more solubility, the TDS has to be always higher. The extraction yield, it should be always higher with the dark roasted coffee, but it's not always like that. Yeah. So
nice. And I was speaking to someone the other day, and we were talking about dark roast and why it prefers higher bars as compared to lighter roast. And they enlightened me to the data point of higher pressures exhibit different boiling points of volatile aromatics. And the higher you go, obviously there's a higher temperature. So those aromatics disappear. So in part kind of explains why lighter roasts, there is more complexity in terms of more subtle flavors at the lower bar pressures. And it's simply to do with the boiling points of the volatile aromatics in the coffee. So
no. Aroma is already gas. It doesn't do anything with the boiling point. Aroma is already gas.
Yes. But if your bars are high enough, then they're getting released into the atmosphere. It's not going into the cup. I think that's the issue.
No, it's confusing. But the pressure is higher. Yeah. That means the saturation point is going to be higher.
Yes.
The saturation point is going to be higher so that the aroma, the molecules, can be more extracted in the cup. Yeah.
But
it doesn't go anywhere. Yeah.
But I think what they were trying to explain was the volatile aromas are disappearing into the atmosphere. They're not going into the liquid.
Aroma doesn't go into the liquid. Yeah, because it's gas. Yeah, it usually cannot dissolve in the water.
Yes. So
there should be more oil because the dark roast coffees contains like more oil, so it can have more aroma into the cup because oil can dissolve the aromas.
Okay, maybe I'll need to revisit this one. I've got my wires confused. I was in the impression that what he was saying was the higher the boiling point is, the less aromatics you're getting into the cup. So you are essentially right, though. Like what you're saying is true. I can't discredit that. Is what you're saying is the higher the pressure, the more aromatics you're extracting into the oils. But because the temperature is higher than the vaporization point from the oils, you're not getting that into the cup. I think that's what he's meaning is you possibly can you know, around the group head, that's what the aromas are coming from around as you're extracting. That's what you're smelling. Now, and those aromas are not going into the cup. They're going into the around in the atmosphere. And that's what he is saying. It's like, if you put this, no,
Yeah.
okay, but I could be
Okay.
wrong, and I could have misinterpreted it wrong, but
It's not that simple actually. It's not
okay.
that simple because it's, if you think about the perfume, it has got the aroma from the outside.
Yeah.
But it still has got the aroma from the inside of the perfume, because the perfume, the liquid that the perfume use can dissolve the aromas in there, but the aroma is actually form of the gas, so it can like vaporize.
Yes.
Into the, yeah. So, but it's similar like a dark roast coffee, but so the oils can contain the aroma, but the aroma can still come out from there in the cup. Yeah, but if you drink it, you can feel more aroma, and it's different because if you smell from the outside, the volume of the gas is always big, so you cannot kind of like gather them together and then smell it at once. But when you drink it,
I see where you're coming from. Yes.
the aroma can be gathered and then goes out to your nose.
Perhaps I should say it something differently, like the amount of the aroma going into the cup would be less at 9 bar than it would be at 7 bar. Like think about when we swirl a cup of a shot after it's been extracted, you're releasing all those aromatics into the atmosphere, but they won't go back into the cup, right? So technically speaking, when you come back to that cup to swirl again, the intensity of that aroma won't be as intense as before. Do you kind of get my logic? But I could be wrong though. I mean, I could have misinterpreted it incorrectly.
But it kind of different story, but that's possible. There is possibility. But different thing is 1 second. I forgot the word.
It's okay. This is great discussion, by the way.
Yeah. Threshold value of the aromas are really, really low.
Right.
Really low. So if there is a little bit of amount of the gas, the aroma molecules, then you can just feel it. So even though you release the aromas into the air by swallowing it, but you can still feel the aroma. And if the temperature gets lower, you can even feel the aroma more intensively. So there is possibilities that the aroma can be like losing from the cup after a time, or if you swell, so that you kind of like wants to release the aroma into the air. But
this is exactly where it stemmed from. I used to have one of my guys who trained me, and he was adamant when I was pulling anything black, even if it was an Americano, to get the cup and the as close as the coffee stream as possible. So you're not, you've got less chance of your shot oxidizing as it's traveling through the air.
I know that guy. I actually talked to the guy.
Okay.
But that's really, 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 really little thing.
Okay.
Yeah, too little thing. There are like 99% of this when you extract things, but you're considering this. Yeah. This can change much more than this. And this won't like affect on the flavor because people cannot taste that.
Okay.
But there is possibility that this can change things, but usually this is more important. Actually, I just don't want to. Okay.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I was just very curious, and it's great to see your insight on it.
There was a someone just want to like make a special pour filter which can cover the whole path into the cup. So there's a pour filter, but there is kind of exposed, right? So
Yeah.
when the coffee comes out, it's all exposed to the air.
Yeah.
But the guy wants to make a kind of like pole, like metal pole on there, so that the coffee doesn't get like exposed when during the coffee goes into the cup.
So like a really long spout.
Yeah, it's kind of a spout, but a really long spout.
Okay.
Basket and yeah, something like this.
Oh.
And maybe cup is sealed as well. So it's all sealed like condition.
Oh, okay.
But as soon as you open it up, but yeah, this difference. So he doesn't need to even open it. So that can work. Well, I'm not really sure because yeah, I cannot really believe the human body because we taste it and then we tell. But
yeah.
all...
I mean, like I used to work with I would say medium dark roast. And my personal experience, I saw a correlation with the darker roast having a benefit, but with the lighter roast, I didn't see a benefit at all. So I don't know whether it's a case of it reduces the time at which the darker roasted bean the shot will die, basically become undrinkable. I don't know, but yeah, it's I was kind of tying that into the principle I was saying about the different boiling points. But I guess yeah, it's you kind of write in saying it doesn't make that much of a difference, if any at all. But yeah, it's I guess it's kind of pseudoscience where you just kind of speculative on where using the example of swirling the shot and it seems to smell a little bit less afterwards. But yeah, I can understand how it's a very small detail and I think can a lot of people taste it? Probably not. And I think that's the issue. So yeah, that's it's pretty interesting to talk about the volatile aromatics in the cup. But yeah, I'm still trying to explain why we're getting more flavors or more aromatics at a lower pressure at a light roast as compared to 9. So, but I guess.
I see.
Yeah.
That's what are you gonna? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see. It's I don't think it's about the pressure.
Okay.
It's more about the extraction time.
Right. So you're saying okay, yes, that would make sense too. Yeah.
Because blooming, for example, it has got like longer extraction time but lower pressure. But that doesn't mean the lower pressure is like working more importantly than the extraction time. Because if we don't bloom, if we set the 2.2 meter per second, and for example, if the pressure hits like 10 or 11 bar, and the extraction time maybe go like 3 seconds, but for blooming, if we bloom it, the extraction time would go like 50 to 1 minute, 50 seconds to 1 minute. But the pressure definitely lower at the blooming profile. Yeah, but I think the extraction time will like affect more than the pressure can. Yeah. So pressure does something. Pressure makes the coffee like heavier if we can make the same condition. But if we try to make same condition, there is only one way. We have to temp differently. Yes. So if we just temp this one at the like normal force, but we have to like mutation temp with the other cup, then the pressure will be higher, but the extraction time will go longer. But we can at least set the same grinder dial with different pressure. Yeah. That's the one way that we can like experience. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I've just got Jimmy asking a question about the resistance curve. Can we show it? Unfortunately, Visualizer doesn't include the resistance line. Sorry about that, Jimmy. But of course, the Insight will produce it. I think just for the easiness of the Zoom, I think Shin's just use Visualizer, which is really, really useful. If you haven't set up an account and using it yet, I would advise you to use it. It is great. And once you've set it up, simply just sign on Visualizer, go into, I think it's extensions, and click on it, put in your details, and then that's it. You know, it will upload your shots automatically, and then you can forget about it until you want to find a graph, or use a skin that has this feature already included, like DSX. Okay, and yeah. This is really useful for, you know, as we've said, as a learning tool, or if you want someone to provide feedback. Okay. All right. So I think we're coming up to the end now, Shin. We've had some really good discussions here, I think. A little bit off piece, but I think really interesting to say the least. I've learned something new, that's for sure. Hopefully everyone who is watching this or will rewatch this will also learn something new. And from the very least, give it a go. And if you're feeling confident, you know, change something or turn it off if you're feeling really confident after a while, and see how you go. We're always here at Decent, so if you're having trouble, just grab me or Shin or email through or any of the social media, and we'll get back to you. All right. So took a little bit of a siesta of the Zooms last week, had a bit of technical problems, and the week before I was just a bit inundated. So we should be coming back on next week. I don't know, Shin, if you want to get involved again next week. I don't know what your time is like, but I'll contact you later on. But yeah, I think we'll close it there. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much, Shin.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you all.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.